When Lincoln gave that speech here in the middle of that war, he didn't know the answer. He phrased it, he didn't quote directly the Declaration of Independence. He formed a proposition. And that proposition was whether or not the unfinished promise of all men created equal was actually going to be delivered. Certainly wasn't a fact in 1863. It was a claim to be tested, and it was tested and ultimately paid for in places like the battlefields of Gettysburg and the blood of those who died fighting, believing in that proposition that we could create a country built on freedom and built on all being created equal. So it's in that spirit of honor and respect that we gather today for this day of remembrance and this day of gratitude. And it's gratitude for our country, unique in the world for 250 years. Gratitude for our founders, gratitude for those who fought and died for her survival, and gratitude to all of you that are here today, all of you that are working to keep that memory alive. I know that we've acknowledged the band over here, and I want to say again that I grew up in a town of 300 people in North Dakota. We had a Memorial Day ceremony like this. I was one of those kids playing in the band, and I played trumpet. Sometimes the school got out too early and everybody was farming, and they would just ask you to play taps behind a pine tree, because that way you could kind of hide and they didn't know who was actually playing. But I want to thank those students that are here today from the Gettysburg area band. I want to thank the organizers who maintain this incredible 159-year-old tradition. I want to thank the veterans who are standing here today and the active military that are here today, and the angel families that are here today, including some angel moms that are behind me on stage here. To our elected and community leaders, gratitude to all of you. Your presence matters. And on the staff and the volunteers and the folks that help care for these sacred places so that future generations will never forget. And Zach, the Deputy Superintendent here, you and your amazing team at the National Park Service and the extraordinary men and women of the National Park Service, not just here but across the country, who preserve the land and these monuments, our battlefields across the country. You're preserving not just places, but you're preserving memory itself. And above all on this today, again, we honor those Americas. Memorial Day is about those who gave their lives for this country and in all wars, across all time and around the world. One of the great responsibilities of citizenship is very simple, and it's also free, and it's the responsibility to say thank you. Not just on Memorial Day, but to every day that we enjoy those freedoms that were secured by those that never came home. This American experiment, as it is, has always depended on citizens willing to sacrifice for something bigger than themselves. And that's what you're doing by being here today. You're here honoring not just individuals that you may have never known, but you're honoring an ideal. And Memorial Day itself was born from that understanding. In 1868, Major General John A. Logan issued General Order Number 11, calling on Americans to decorate the graves. He did that as commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, which had over 400,000 members, the first national veterans group, asked those to get out and decorate the graves. He believed that remembrance was not just an act of sentiment, it was an act of citizenship. And in that sense, it is an honor to be here today to serve in this role as the 55th Secretary of Interior in the Trump administration, an administration that cares deeply about our military and military readiness, about those that serve and those that have served. Earlier today, I was with the President, the Vice President, the Secretary of War, and others at Arlington for a beautiful cemetery, a beautiful ceremony there. And of course, as Secretary of Interior, I've got the privilege and the responsibility of helping to steward some of the most important places in our country, including our national parks and our memorials, and those around Washington, D.C. And one of those places is Logan Circle, named after, effectively, the founder of Memorial Day. This is a place in the center of the city that was long viewed as post-Civil War, where the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement began. A place where Frederick Douglass and General Grant and General Logan all gathered at Logan's house, which still sits on that circle. But that monument and that circle had fallen into disrepair, and as part of President Trump's Make DC Safe and Beautiful. That park, I can tell you right now, is under a full rededication. The statue of General Logan is being restored to its full beauty. Shows him in motion atop a beautiful horse, rallying the Union troops at the Battle of Atlanta after General James McPherson fell in combat. General Logan stepped up, took the lead, rode the battle line, challenged everybody to move forward. It's a reminder that in those decisive moments of history, it's not just armies or generals or presidents. There has to be someone in the ranks brave enough to charge forward. Something I've never shared in any talk I've ever given in my private sector life, which lasted for decades in my 8 years as governor, as governor I got to speak every year at memorial events, but it never seemed appropriate to share this particular piece of information. But I have two great-grandfathers that served in the Civil War. One of them served here, and his name is on a monument here. It's kind of unusual. I mean, each of us have four great-grandfathers. To have two serving in the Union Army. One was basically a child. He was a young teenager. He was a bugler. His name was Ferdinand Kilbourne. Came from Pennsylvania, enrolled with that famous group called the Pennsylvania Bucktails. They wore a deer tail on the back of their caps. He was barely more than a boy. But buglers, carried the commands that moved entire regiments: advance, hold, retreat, reform. They stood exposed because the soldiers had to hear them. There was no other forms of communication when the battle was raging. But he lived through that, obviously, because if he hadn't, I wouldn't be standing here. He lived through that, and he handed down to his family and then to his grandchildren, which included my mother, and on to us. We have his Union cap and we have his bugle. I've never shared that in a speech before, but it makes me, being here today at Gettysburg for the first time ever at a memorial thing, makes me think how significant that is. My other great-grandfather, Benjamin F. Slaughter, was a doctor. Started out as an assistant surgeon, became a full surgeon. Didn't make it to Gettysburg, but served in lots of battles in 1864 and 1865. And he also lived, which was fortunate. Probably unfortunate that if you were seeing a Civil War surgeon and you said, "Doctor, what's your name?" and he said, "My name's Dr. Slaughter," you probably said, "Hey, I'll take the other guy if I could, please." But with that, he came from Kentucky, and he came from a family that was divided. He fought for the Union against cousins and uncles that were fighting for the Confederacy. This was a great battle that tore our nation apart. And somehow after that war, there was many that helped stitch it together. He and my great-grandmother were two of those. My great-grandmother, Linda Warfel Slaughter, we know a lot about her because she wrote a lot. She wrote a book called The Freedmen of the South about immediately after the war, the Reconstruction. And she was in Kentucky working on that project as a volunteer when she met my grandfather. They ended up moving to North Dakota together to serve on the frontier. He is a doctor in the Union Army at Fort Rice and then Fort Lincoln in North Dakota, where they crossed paths with Custer. But that's another story. But these stories remind us that service does not end when the fighting stops. There is service in rebuilding, service in restoring, service in strengthening the company to this country for the next generation. And that service is something that we can all pick up and do today, whether you're in uniform or not. And that is really the story of America. It's a country that's never been perfect, isn't perfect now, but it's been shaped by aspirations that we can have a country of freedom. We can have freedoms that don't exist in other parts of the world today. There are people getting up today around the world that have no freedom of speech, that have no freedom of religion, no freedom to assemble, no right to bear arms. We know that exists today. We know the places where that exists. And we're fighting and continue to fight for the American story, the American experiment, and the American dream. And this country is shaped by generations of people willing to answer that call, including those that are in uniform here today and the veterans that have stood. The Americans that are buried here today did exactly that. They believed in something bigger than themselves. They fought, and America endured. When President Lincoln came here just a few months after that, what would have seemed like a galactic battle, even today, it's the largest, most ferocious, most deadly battle ever held in even the Western Hemisphere, not just the United States. He reminded the nation that freedom was not self-sustaining. He said it was the job of the living to be dedicated to that unfinished work, and that unfinished work belongs to every generation. It continues today with the men and women serving in uniform around the world. It continues in the military families that carry the quiet burden of sacrifice, of distance, of being apart. And it continues with citizens like you that choose service, that choose gratitude, and choose love of country above all else. At Interior, we are entrusted with preserving these places where Americans remember who they are. Gettysburg, the National Mall, Arlington Cemetery, the Statue of Liberty, the country's most iconic battlefields, memorials, cemeteries, parks, and monuments. These places matter because history matters. Memory matters. Memory is power. Memory is our teacher. A nation that forgets sacrifice eventually forgets freedom itself. And that is why gatherings like this matter. It's why you matter. It's why the flags on those graves out there that somebody went to, those thousands and thousands of graves, matter. And it's why teaching, as the Colonel said, it's why teaching our children these stories matter. Because reverence and remembrance is how a free people stay worthy of freedom. So today on these sacred grounds, let us honor those who gave what Lincoln called the last full measure of devotion. Let us remember the fallen not only with words, but with our lives, with lives that are worthy of their sacrifice. Let us leave here today recommitted to the unfinished work of strengthening this amazing, beautiful, abundant, powerful, and generous country that we call America and that we love so much. God bless the memory of the fallen, our veterans, their families, the Gold Star families, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.